Are 185, the nays are 233. The motion is not adopted. The question is on passage of the bill. Under Clause 10 of Rule 20, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
The House is now voting final passage on the $32 billion energy and water spending bill for fiscal year 2013. It is a 5-minute vote. Still to come, votes on 2 motions to instruct conferees on the transportation bill and ahead amendment debate on the 2013 Homeland Security bill.
165, the bill is passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion to instruct on H.R. 4348, offered by the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Flake, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will redesignate the motion.
Motion to instruct conferees on H.R. 4348, offered by Mr. Flake of Arizona.
The question is on the motion to instruct. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
This 5-minute vote, and by the way, the Energy and Water Bill passes the House. Fiscal year 2013 spending bill for energy and water. The vote was 255 to 165. Here, the first of two motions to instruct conferees on the transportation bill. Jeff Flake's motion to instruct would instruct House conferees to insist on a provision in the final conference report guaranteeing all states at least a 95% rate of return on highway account tax payments.
The yeas are 259, the nays are 154. The motion is not adopted. Sorry, the motion is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The unfinished business is on the motion to instruct on H.R. 4348, offered by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Doggett, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will redesignate the motion.
Motion to instruct conferees on H.R. 4348, offered by Mr. Doggett of Texas.
The question is on the motion to instruct. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
This is the motion to instruct by Lloyd Doggett of Texas, which would instruct House conferees on the transportation bill to agree with a section of the Senate amendment to expand powers used to prevent money laundering to further combat tax evasion and international tax haven abuse. On the issue of the transportation bill, Reuters reports that with the deadline approaching for a massive U.S. spending bill for roads, bridges, and rail projects, Senate and House negotiators have not addressed the 1,700-mile-long elephant in the room, whether to fast-track the Keystone Oil Pipeline as part of the plan. They write that after 4 weeks of discussion, Senate negotiators delivered a proposal to their House counterparts yesterday on core transportation issues, still hoping to meet a June 30th deadline to forge a new transportation bill. So this is the last motion to instruct conferees. Coming up after this, the House will move on to debate on amendments to the 2013 spending bill for the Department of Homeland Security.
yeas are 192. The nays are 226. Motion is not adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina rise?
Mr. Speaker, I send to the desk a privileged report from the Committee on Rules for filing under the rule.
Clerk will read the title, the report, and the title.
Report to accompany House Resolution 679, resolution providing for consideration of the Bill 436, H.R. 436, to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to repeal the excise tax on medical devices, and providing for consideration of the Bill H.R. 5882, making appropriations for the legislative branch for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2013, and for other purposes.
To be referred to the House calendar and ordered printed. Pursuant to House Resolution 667 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for the further consideration of H.R. 5855. Will the gentleman from Florida, Mr. West, kindly take the chair?
The House is in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for the further consideration of the Bill H.R. 5855, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill making appropriations for the Department of Homeland Security for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2013, and for other purposes.
When the Committee of the Whole House rose earlier today, all time for general debate had expired. Pursuant to the rule, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. During consideration of the bill for amendment, the Chair may accord priority in recognition to a member offering an amendment who has caused it to be printed in the designated place in the congressional record. Those amendments will be considered read. The clerk will read.
Be it enacted, the following sums are appropriated for the Department of Homeland Security for the fiscal year 2013, namely, Title I, Departmental Management and Operations, Departmental Operations, Office of the Secretary and Executive Management, $121,850,000.
What purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
I have an amendment at the desk.
Will report the amendment.
Do they not have it?
This is Graham. I don't have it.
Will the gentleman please send his amendment to the desk?
I believe it.
Amendment offered by Mr. Flake of Arizona, page 2, line 17, after the dollar amount, insert reduced by $50,000. Page 7, line 13, after the dollar amount, insert increased by $43,000.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the Chair. This amendment is straightforward. It would reduce funding for the Office of the Secretary by $50,000 and transfer a revenue-neutral amount to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection salaries and expenses. This is a nominal cut from the Secretary's nearly $122 million in funding, again only slightly more than the committee provided for the Secretary to spend on receptions this year. I offer this amendment as a means to bringing up an important issue both to Congress and to the Secretary's attention. Let me start by thanking the Chairman and the Ranking Member for their attention to border issues in this bill, as well as the staff's assistance in bringing this amendment to the floor. In the report accompanying last year's Homeland Security Appropriation Bill, the committee directed the Department to provide a, quote, resource allocation and staffing model for ports of entry. It would appear to be the trend with congressional requests for information. Answers to these questions or budget documentation were never provided. The department either failed to prioritize or simply ignored the request. The committee report notes, quote, as the committee has not yet received the CBP workload staffing allocation model, the committee cannot assess CBP's identified needs. As we're no doubt aware, funding for border security efforts between the port of entry has received or has increased exponentially over recent years, and justifiably so. While the budget for Border Patrol, the budget for Customs and Border Patrol officers at the ports has not kept pace. When I travel in the border region, there are often concerns raised at that point that there is insufficient staffing at the ports. Those serving at the ports of entry have a dual role. They have to facilitate commerce across the border and to prevent unauthorized people from crossing the border. I could talk at length about the benefits of cross-border trade for communities along the border, but let me just cite a couple of examples. Focusing on the southern border, Mexico is the third largest U.S. trading partner and the second largest U.S. export market, with a reported 6 million U.S. jobs depending on trade with Mexico. The executive director of the Arizona-Mexico Commission was recently quoted saying, quote, Arizona's border is the gateway for some $26 billion worth of imports and exports for some 44 million people each year. A recent Maricopa Association of Governments release cited that legal Mexican visitors spend roughly $7.3 million a day in Arizona, and Arizona businesses export nearly $6 billion in goods in 2011. So there are benefits all over for trade of this type. The Mariposa Port of Entry in Nogales is one of the largest ports of entry for fruit and vegetables in the U.S. In 2011, the U.S. imported 13.4 billion pounds of fresh produce grown in Mexico, and more than a third of that entered through Nogales. Let me just summarize the rest. We simply have to have better staffing at these ports, and the department has been asked to provide us with their needs, and they simply won't. We simply haven't been able to get that information. I'm the last member of the Appropriations Committee that would support writing a blank check to any department, but we have got to make sure that these needs are met, and that's why this amendment is critical, and I am grateful to the chairman and ranking minority member for working with me on it. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman may not reserve his time.
I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. For what purposes the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
Strike the last word. Rise in support of the gentleman's amendment. The Secretary has failed to submit critical reports necessary for this committee's oversight, including workload staffing models for CBP officers. So, therefore, we do accept the gentleman from Arizona's amendment. Yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Wisconsin rise to seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment and would be seeking recognition at this time.
Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Ms. Moore of Wisconsin, page 2, line 17. After the dollar amount, insert increase by $3 million. Page 9, line 7. After the dollar amount, insert reduced by $4,800,000.
The gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of my amendment is to restore $3 million to the Department of Homeland Security Office of Civil Rights and Liberties. This amendment would simply level fund this account at the fiscal year to 2012 level. Mr. Chairman, it troubles me to see the continued rollout of secure communities and increase in funding for these 287G programs in the underlying bill, especially juxtaposed with a 13% decrease in funding for the Office of Civil Rights and Liberties. Experts and officials across the country have concerns about these programs that shift federal immigration laws into the hands of local police. Mr. Chair, I ask unanimous consent to insert a letter into the record from 88 civil rights organizations urging the Federal Bureau of Investigation to, quote, end its facilitation of the fundamentally flawed Secure Communities Deportation Program, unquote.
Request to be covered by general leave.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The letter states, quote, Secure Communities has caused widespread controversy because it threatens public safety, encourages racial profiling, undermines community policing, and serves as a deportation dragnet, ensnaring anyone who is booked into police custody, unquote. As co-chair of the Women's Caucus, I am particularly concerned when I hear stories of the effects of this program that they have on victims across our communities. Women and their children are increasingly afraid to go to local police to get confidential help, to call 911 during an emergency, because they are terrified of being caught in this dragnet. For many, suffering through an abusive situation is better than watching their families being torn apart. Mr. Chairman, these are real people who are victims or witnesses to domestic violence or other crimes, but they cannot come forward. According to an October 2011 report by the UC Berkeley Law School's Warren Institute, more than one-third of individuals arrested in this program report that they have a U.S. citizen spouse or child. In other words, an estimated 88,000 families with U.S. citizen members have been impacted by Secure Communities. The same report found that Latinos comprise 93% of the individuals arrested in this program, despite only comprising 77% of the population. Mr. Chairman, I suggest that this is not the America we want to create. We should all be able to agree that we don't want to see an America where victims are afraid of the police, or an America where racial profiling is encouraged or tolerated. Now, I understand, Mr. Chairman, that some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle believe that increasing enforcement policies is the right approach to solve our broken immigration system. With that being said, I appeal to my colleagues to support efforts by the Department of Homeland Security to ensure adequate oversight of this program. Steps that the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Civil Rights and Liberties have taken and will take to analyze arrest data to make sure that there are no serious indications of racial profiling in any of the participating communities, help improve training for local law enforcement officers to reduce confusion and ensure that there are clear guidelines to prevent misuse of the program, to inform the public about options they have and recourses they can use if their civil liberties are violated by department action, and finally to help investigate and resolve cases where an individual alleges that their rights were violated. I support these important efforts toward promoting accountability and oversight over these enforcement programs. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment. It is fully offsetted as is required of this appropriations process, and it is not an increase in this program, but it simply level funds it at 2012 levels. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I respectfully yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman yields back the balance of her time. The gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to rise to oppose the gentlelady's amendment. The problem with the amendment is it gets the immigration enforcement, and it demoralizes the frontline law enforcement personnel. This amendment would actually empower more bureaucrats from Washington to look over the shoulders of the hardworking officers in the field that are trying to keep us safe. So I would urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his. The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. For what reason is the gentleman from North Carolina, seek recognition.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last words.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in support of this amendment to restore funding for the Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties in order to ensure that both the 287G program and the Secure Communities program are not illegally profiling individuals. The bill before us funds the Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties at a level that is $2.2 million below the budget request and $3 million below current year funding. Now, we're in a tight fiscal environment, we all know that, but surely we can meet the needs of our frontline personnel without jeopardizing the proper and robust and careful oversight of the activities provided by this Civil Rights and Civil Liberties Office. In fact, at the same time this bill is reducing funding for oversight, it's actually increasing funding for the controversial and all too often mismanaged 287G program. 3 different audits by the DHS Inspector General have found serious concerns about the 287G program, and ICE has had to terminate some 287G task forces, notably in Maricopa County, Arizona, after the Justice Department documented clear racial profiling and other programmatic abuses. So we need to make sure that authority is being exercised properly, and that's exactly the task of the Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. So I thank the gentlewoman for offering this amendment. It's a good amendment, and I urge colleagues to support it, and I yield back.
The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Wisconsin. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask for a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Wisconsin will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise to be recognized?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Brown of Georgia, page 2, line 17, after the dollar amount insert reduced by $3,655,500.
Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Okay, I was going to ask for unanimous consent that, to dispense with the reading of the amendment.
Is there any objection to dispensing with the reading of the amendment? Without objection, so ordered. The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment would reduce the administrative salaries and the expense accounts in the underlying bill by just 3%, with the exception of the U.S. Coast Guard. It does not affect their expenses. Our nation is facing a total economic meltdown. And now more than ever, it is apparent that we have to stop the outrageous spending that's going on here in Washington, D.C. Over the last 2 years, House members have voted to reduce their own administrative accounts, their members' representational allowances, by more than 11%. Yet over that same period of time, many agencies have seen minimal reductions and in some cases even increases in their accounts. For a good example, the TSA has only experienced a 3.5% cut over the last 2 years. I know many of my colleagues can agree that the TSA has not only been a complete and utter failure, but it has also been a colossal waste of taxpayer money amounting to almost $60 billion. Moreover, TSA personnel have not prevented the first terrorist attack from happening on American soil. In fact, at least 17 known terrorists have flown in the United States more than 24 different times. Yet this year, TSA screener personnel will receive increased funding for their compensation and benefits that totals more than $30 million above fiscal year 2012. This is totally unacceptable. Another example I'd like to point out, too, in the underlying bill is funding for a brand new agency called the Office of Biometric Identity Management. This new office will receive
almost $200 million for their administrative salaries and expense accounts. Mr. Chairman, we need to be looking for areas where we can make cuts, not for opportunities to grow the size and scope of the federal government. Now, certainly, we can all agree that many of the offices, agencies, and individuals employed by the Department of Homeland Security are very deserving of the pay for which they receive. But, Mr. Chairman, let's be realistic. If we are serious about reducing spending and reducing our deficit, we have to ask every agency to follow Congress's lead and take a small reduction in their administrative funding, instead of asking for increases or trying to create new programs. To be clear, a 3% reduction in these accounts would, in many cases, still result in less than a 10% reduction in funding from FY11 levels. While this amount is small, it would pay dividends, huge dividends, resulting in nearly $500 million in savings in this bill alone. It is long past time to get serious about spending, Mr. Chairman, and this amendment represents a balanced way to achieve significant savings. I urge my colleagues to support my amendment and to reduce spending in these accounts by just a mere 3%. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
Strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise to reluctantly oppose my good friend from Georgia's amendment. I think he makes some very good points, but one thing that, as I had mentioned in the debate this afternoon and the general debate, this is the third fiscal year in a row that the bill has tried to work at cutting already. Physical discipline and funding for homeland needs are the two most important things. And as I said earlier, that physical discipline is something that is a very important aspect of this bill. The bill is actually has a decrease of $484 million below last year's bill, and it is $394 million below the President's request. As I had mentioned earlier this afternoon, we do think that we do need to be very much mindful of the situation we find ourselves in this country. But bear in mind that we have reached a delicate balance to make sure that we make sure frontline operations are secure, that they are operating at a level that we can make sure that our nation is secure. The Office of Secretary, for example, has been cut 9% below the President's request, and it's 8% below the FY12 Act. This is the 10th year anniversary of the establishment of the Department of Homeland Security, and certainly we've got to make sure that our department is strong, it has strong management, and my concern that this amendment would undermine that goal, and so I would ask members to oppose this amendment. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last words.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I want to second the remarks of our chairman. I think this is an amendment that, while well-intentioned in certain respects, is not one that we can or should accept. I know it's easy to target management and administrative costs. They sometimes lack concreteness, they lack a constituency. But as a matter of fact, we depend on these management and administrative functions to run the department, and at the end of the day, cutting those functions will indeed affect frontline operations. We should make no mistake about that. In my opinion, this bill already cuts administrative functions by imprudent amounts. It already slashes funding for offices at the departmental level, for example, by 21%, below the administration's request. So while this amendment may be appealing to some, I believe it's unwise, and I urge colleagues to oppose it. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Georgia. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chairs, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman, ask for a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Georgia will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Offered by Mr. Holt of New Jersey, page 2, line 17, after the dollar amount, insert reduced by $10 million. Page 6, line 8, after the first dollar amount, insert reduced by $25 million.
Gentleman from New Jersey.
I ask unanimous consent that the House dispense with the reading of this amendment.
Is there any objection to the dispensing of the reading of the amendment? Without objection, so ordered. Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I thank the chair of this subcommittee and the ranking member for the work they've put into this. I rise with an amendment that is designed to ensure that our rail and transit systems have the additional resources, or at least some of the additional resources, that they need to help thwart any potential terrorist attacks on buses and trains. Now, just over a year ago, when our forces raided Osama bin Laden's compound, they discovered materials in his hideout indicating that he was planning attacks on rail and transit systems. And we have no reason to believe that al-Qaeda's remnants have abandoned any such plans. As we've seen repeatedly, the threat is very real. Since 2004, terrorist cells have conducted successful and deadly bombings on major passenger rail systems in Spain, the United Kingdom, India, Belarus, with over 600 people killed, thousands wounded. And despite this threat, over the last few years, our country has been backsliding in providing our rail and transit systems the resources they need. In years past, rail and transit security funding had its own line item in the budget. But a couple of years ago, it was rolled into the overall state and local grant programs. And its funding has been slashed. And slash is not an overstatement. From a previous high of $300 million down to only about $88 million this past year. The large reduction was made in the face of an existing $6 billion in rail and transit security funding needs identified by rail and transit operators around the nation, as reported by the American Public Transportation Association. And I ask, Mr. Chairman, unanimous consent to include in the record a letter from Mr. Michael Milanofi, President and CEO of the American Public Transportation Association.
Covered by General Lee.
My amendment addresses part of this shortfall by moving a total of $50 million from 3 accounts: overall management and administration, intelligence and analysis, and the Transportation Security Administration, to the state and local programs grant account for the express purpose of increasing funding available for rail and transit security grants. I propose these moves reluctantly, but we need the funding in the transit security. This would bring to $138 million the account for rail security, well above the $88 million currently there, but well below the $300 million that only a few years ago was the funding level. This amendment actually saves the taxpayer $36 million because of the difference in the account spend-down rates. It's a responsible amendment, I believe, that addresses a crucial vulnerability in our rail and transit security posture, and I ask support for this amendment. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
I oppose the gentleman's amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, as I mentioned, I do rise in opposition to the amendment. This bill cuts programs substantially, but in a way that the bill that we have before us that we have brought to the floor is something that has already cut programs substantially across the board. But the way that we have cut it, we feel, is responsible and manageable. Some of the cuts that we have had in here is the Office of Secretary, as I had mentioned earlier, has been cut by 9% below the request, 8% below the FY12, and it is 18% below the FY10 level. The bill has reduced management to a bare minimum with decrease in most offices, including General Counsel. The bill has already cut TSA management by $60 million and $20 million in cut in aviation security account. This amendment that the gentleman from New Jersey is bringing up, by taking $15 million more from this account, will impair TSA's ability to manage its aviation security missions and is also simply not responsible. The amendment would slash funding for the Department's intelligence programs, which represent a core Homeland Security capability. For grants, the bill provides $2.8 billion for Homeland Security first responder grants, $400 million more than provided in FY12. Of that, the bill provides $1.8 billion for the Secretary to provide to programs that address the highest need based on threat and based on risk. Breaking out specific grants, as this amendment does, funds projects for various programs without an overreaching lens. So the consolidation of this bill forces the Secretary to examine the intelligence and risk and put scarce dollars where they're needed most. I would urge my colleagues to vote no on this amendment. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. Gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last words.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I want to commend our colleague from New Jersey for offering an amendment that takes explicit account about the need the need for robust funding for state and local grant programs, including those aimed at rail and transit security. As I noted as this debate began, we are indebted to Chairman Aderholt and the majority for increasing funding for these grants in this fiscal year 2013 bill over the 2012 levels. But as the gentleman from New Jersey has noted, this funding is against a baseline that has been significantly reduced in the previous 2 fiscal years. I was privileged to serve as chairman of this subcommittee in the years 2007 to 2010. We worked very hard in those years to provide robust funding for important grant programs. Increased funding for FEMA first responder grants, we did by $1 billion between fiscal 07 and fiscal 10. And unfortunately, these programs are now under threat. Since 2010, funding for FEMA grants has been cut by nearly 50% to a total level of $1.3 billion for fiscal 2012. Those cuts are short-sighted and they're dangerous, and I have said so repeatedly. After all, local governments are the first responders to terrorist attacks, natural disasters, other major emergencies. Local law enforcement, fire, emergency, medical, and as well as county public health and other public safety personnel are responsible for the on-the-ground response and recovery action. Local communities or public entities own, operate, and secure essential aspects of our nation's infrastructure, our ports, transit systems, water supplies, schools, and hospitals. So plainly put, these grants protect our communities and are vitally important in our ability to detect, deter, and respond to a variety of threats and disasters. And as the gentleman from New Jersey has stressed, our rail and transit systems are an important part of this network and are, in many cases, very much in need of the kind of funding that this bill has provided and should provide. I reluctantly add, though, Mr. Chairman, that there are problems with these offsets. And I will repeat what the chairman has said about some of the cuts that are included in these bills, these important accounts. The Secretary's office, that might seem an easy thing to cut. But this bill already reduces the Secretary's office by 9%. Analysis and intelligence, this bill already cuts this by 8%. And TSA Aviation Security has one of the largest cuts in this bill. It's $212 million below the 2012 levels. There are very few good places to turn, I realize, And we're so often in a position of trading off worthwhile objectives. But I do feel bound both to commend the gentleman for calling our attention to these grant programs and the need for robust funding, but also to highlight some of the problems with the offsets in this particular amendment. And I yield back.
The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New Jersey. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman, for that, I ask a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment by the gentleman from New Jersey will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition? The clerk will read.
Page 3, line 19, Office of the Undersecretary for Management, $213,128,000.